Hi, everyone. My name's Taylor. I'm with the Beta Angel Project, and each of these videos shares research that directly changed how I coach and train. So we're going to be seeing how to go from research to practice. Just as a reminder, if you look in the top right, we look for protocols, measurements, constraints, and shifts in how to interpret athlete response that'll change decision making. First paper I want to go over is going to be the determination of finger-flexor critical force in climbing by Giles et al. So the et al. In this case, I probably should have written it out, is actually the folks at Lattice, which was very thankful and interested to read this paper when it first came out. We're going to be talking about critical force and work prime. So if you pay attention or draw your attention to the lower right-hand corner, critical force and work prime are seen there. You've got on the y-axis you have force, on the x-axis you have time. And so critical force is that sort of dashed line just below the gray area. That's the highest force you can comfortably or uncomfortably sustain kind of indefinitely. Um, Work prime is going to be the sort of section, the gray section in between, and that's kind of like your anaerobic tank. From a practical standpoint, we would want to know how to play with this, how to track this. Tracking it, I'm a little bit less concerned with. I actually like this as a learning tool. Tracking it, you could go in, you could find me the calculations, and I'll and this paper is open source. I encourage you to go take a look at the calculations, but I'll tell you what the protocol is so that you can learn a little bit more about a good sport climbing metric or a decent sport climbing metric. There's some caveats to that. So how did they do this? Well, they went into first you basically get your maximum force. And we'll do that for 7 seconds because we want to maintain that in terms of consistency with the next part of the protocol. So 7 seconds, what's your max force? Then from there, we want to determine the time to failure at 80%, 60%, and 45% using intermittent contractions. So that would be like 7 seconds on, 3 seconds off, and you just kind of go until failure. Failure can be defined in a number of different ways. I think in the study they pretty much just said whenever the climber falls off, but you can also, if you've got a force gauge, you can determine it based upon, say, a threshold. I think in the paper they looked at two different amounts of rest times between each of the tests. So if you have four tests, they looked at these sort of like 20-minute rest periods between each of the tests, and that's in a single session. And they also had a multi-session approach where they did it like essentially one test per day. And I think critical force, if I remember correctly, did just fine in the single session or the multi-session approach to testing. Work prime became uh, significantly less reliable in the single session. So, if you're just using this to learn, single session is perfectly fine. If you're concerned at all about injury or anything like that, I'd go multi-session. Um, so basically, if you can kind of think about it, look back at our graph, 80% would be somewhere up there, and then you've got 60% and then 45%. They just basically use the calculations to figure out what the area under the curve looks like, as well as the critical force line. Um, so this will just really just help you learn how long you can sustain force at these different thresholds. I think they used it on a 20 millimeter edge, but don't quote me on that. And obviously this will be different depending upon the holds and whatnot. I just think I've used this in the past with athletes to basically say, hey, how long can you go? And it helps people learn how to fight a little bit more, how to go hard. Obviously, don't if you're injured right now, I would not try to do this because you're going to failure. Anytime you're going to failure, there are some concerns, and so I typically tend to not be super strict about going to failure when I'm just using this as a learning tool. When I'm trying to track it, obviously you probably don't have data from other individuals, so you just be comparing yourself, doing some sort of training block, and then seeing how the training block worked at the end. In the future, we'll go over why critical force and work prime may not necessarily be the best protocols. I think since the science is just not there yet. I know several scientists are looking for alternatives or looking for how to make it better.
Hit like and subscribe to see more and leave a comment on whether you've ever used critical force for either tracking or as a learning tool.